Before we begin today's video, I want you to take a nice long look at these packaging materials that consist of nothing more than some loose bubble wrap, some deflated plastic airbags, and that's the extent of the packaging insulation and materials contained within this package. This is a Gemini high torque direct drive professional turntable. This is all broken, this was all deformed, this wasn't like this when it was being listed on eBay. On this side there is some more damage. Plastic fractured away, cracked and chipped away. And if we go over here, not only do we have all this damage up here, we've got a large, sizable crack forming in this plastic base. But wait, it gets better. If we take a look at these feet here, this has sustained damage, and this one even more so. It's cracked and broken away. You can get an idea of just how much force and abuse this endured from the shipping people. I don't think that's supposed to be as deformed and bent as it is. And this turntable weighs the better portion of probably 30 pounds. It's definitely sustained a fair bit of abuse from FedEx, but it kind of goes without saying that if you put a 30-pound item in a box with nothing more than some deflated airbags and some loose pieces of bubble wrap, it's probably not going to make it through the entire trip in one piece. In fact, this one didn't. If I move it around, you can hear a bunch of plastic that's broken off, and it's just jiggling around loosely inside. I know, sure, I could probably go online and find an Audio-Technica AT-LP120 at great cost, which is nothing more than a modern-day clone of the venerable Technics SL1200, but I was looking to keep it fairly inexpensive, and this definitely fit the bill. It has most of the same layout of a Technics SL1200 with the start-stop button, speed selector, your strobe light, which also doubles as the on and off switch, target light, or as it's known on the Technics SL1200, a track light. And just like on the Technics SL1200, there is a pitch control. It goes all the way +10 to -10, and you can actually calibrate it so that you're at a certain speed, either positive 7.2% or negative 3.3%, by using the stroboscope. The counterweight easily slides off, which may or may not be a good thing, because of the many Gemini turntables I do find quite a few of them are missing their counterweights. Anti-skating control, the Q lever, which does engage gently. It doesn't just bounce the tone arm up like on the Audio-Technica AT-LP60, where the minute you engage it and you do so rapidly, the tone arm just bounces up and down, which isn't terrific. And you do have a tone arm lock, metal tone arm, of course. I can't say for sure whether or not this is the original head shell this turntable shipped with. I don't believe that it is, because it would probably match the color of the tone arm and the rest of the turntable, black being the color of majority here. Somebody's fitted a new cartridge on here. Again, I don't believe it came with this, but I could be wrong. It's the same one that's included on my Audio-Technica AT-LP60. If you're a head shell aficionado, you have a nice little storage area for it here. It just locks into place and stands up neatly. Coming over here, the XLR connector might very well mislead some people, but it isn't for audio connectivity. It's actually for a DC 12-volt 500 milliamp lamp, which uses what looks to be some sort of a flashlight bulb, which proves exceedingly useful for my usage scenario, because the room, or the area in which this is going to reside, has very poor lighting, and I frequently struggle with seeing the actual tracks on the LP or the 45, and or just what I'm doing in general. So this will prove to be immensely useful. You simply connect it. Surprisingly, I did get the aluminum 45 RPM adapter. It isn't missing. I also received a very durable rubber slip mat. The platter is in plastic, unlike that Ion TT USB I had for some length of time, which had a cheap felt slip mat and an even cheaper plastic platter. If you were working on transferring your vinyl records to digital, you'd practically have to cordon off your house and reside outside for a little while, at least as long as the turntable was playing. You'd have all manner of vibrational rumblings in the background of the audio. It tells us to make sure that the 2 pins under the platter are fixed properly. Here's the underside of the platter, complete with the 2 pins that were just mentioned on this sticker, which go into their respective holes on the motor's flywheel. As I move it now and flip it on its side, I want you to listen very closely to all those broken pieces that are moving around. I don't think that's supposed to sound like that from the factory. Conveniently, there's a right angle IEC power connection here, a 3-pin connection, so there is supposed to be a ground, although the owner cut the ground pin off of the cable, so eventually I will source a replacement cord just so I can take advantage of a 3rd ground pin, which you really should use and should avoid cutting off. But again, once you're about to see what the person did to the inside of this turntable, it really won't surprise you. Here's what's responsible for all the heft that this turntable sports. This gigantic dead weight that's placed on the bottom, and it looks like this suffered even more shipping damage internally than that which I first saw. A bunch of the mounts for the screws have broken off their posts. There's this one that's broken, this one's cracked. And just for anyone curious about the actual weight of this bottom portion with the weight attached, it's about, if I don't manage to press it down, I'd say about 10.5 pounds, a little over 10.5 pounds. And it looks like it's spilling oil all over or lubrication all over my scale. I think it's a safe bet when I say that the person from whom I purchased this was a real gee-whiz hacker. I don't know what in the world this is supposed to be. This is the audio output board, and they've definitely done some jury-rigged wiring modifications. And of course everyone with exhaust problems is driving their cars today when I have my window open. I don't spy, oh, there's a ferrite choke in here for the AC input. I don't spy anything else that looks grossly hacked or butchered in here. Everything else looks to be in decent shape, but I think I spotted the problem, because one thing I neglected to mention was when I connected this up to my stereo system after immediately unpacking it, the left channel of audio, or the right channel, I believe it was the left channel of audio, was and still is completely dead. And out of the right channel there is the most obnoxious buzzing sound that sounds like a short. And probably because these wires aren't making the best of contact, and that soldering job could definitely stand to be redone and vastly improved. Also, upon my initial examination of this turntable, I noticed pretty early on in the game that something was definitely awry with the anti-skate control. This is the anti-skate knob, and if I go under here, you can see it's somewhere over here. There it is. I'm turning it. Nothing is happening. What should be happening is that this almost minuscule, barely perceptible spring should be making contact and resting behind this pin. So I will do that now. Although, there we go. So now at least when you're using the anti-skate control, it's doing something. You're not just spinning a knob and thinking it's working even though it actually isn't. While I'm no expert on these things, I'm fairly certain that this ground wire isn't supposed to be soldered directly atop this wire, and instead it's supposed to be connected to this trace on the circuit board. Just by simply tracing the path that these wires are taking from the tone arm and then to the RCA cable, it's fairly easy to see and to ascertain what went wrong when the previous person was fixing this, and I use that term as loosely as possible. This green wire makes contact with the ground wire of the RCA cable, the red one makes contact with the red, but then come over here, and this white one, if you trace it, actually makes contact with the ground, and the blue one makes contact with the white. I'm no expert, but I'm pretty sure that they reversed the wires and soldered them to the wrong connector on the RCA cable. The casual listener won't pick up on anything much, at least through my camera's microphones. I don't know if it's readily apparent through the camcorder's microphone, but in person it still sounds like it's in pseudo stereo, where there's a couple of seconds delay between the two channels. At least that's what I can hear from my two speakers. It still sounds like it's in stereo, even though it's clearly a mono 45. So what I did is I went in and converted this to mono, and you definitely won't need a direct hookup to hear the difference and how something is most seriously wrong. Turntable is powered on. Target light works. It's got a neon bulb in there. And then the stroboscope, which is taking that term literally. The cartridge, I believe, is an Audio-Technica ATN 3600L, or maybe a 3600i, I can't be certain. It sort of escapes me at this point in time. It's rather late in the evening. But I replaced the stylus that came with it. I initially put this stylus on the cartridge just to test the turntable out initially, and while it isn't a genuine Audio-Technica replacement stylus, it fared decently well, if not better than the OEM product. It sounded quite decent, but most regrettably this turntable butchered this stylus. The cantilever is hopelessly bent. The stylus tip was sheared off when the anti-skate control decided to act up, and it caused the tone arm and the cartridge and stylus to jump across the record, completely ruined. That belongs in the trash. Goes to show you, don't use good styli on turntables whose working functionality is a mystery, because I had to throw that out. It's completely ruined. Now, if I'm careful enough and I don't damage the stylus in the process, I don't need yet another casualty. You can see that it moves back into its resting position off the turntable platter. And that happens regardless of the setting on the anti-skate jog wheel. And the brake does appear to work. As I was attempting to drop the stylus on the beginning of the record, it has a tendency to skip to the right and drag the stylus off onto the slip mat, and that's a byproduct of the malfunctioning anti-skate control. I did have some troubles with trying to get the turntable's ground to make a good connection. Even after playing with it, I still hear some hum in the background, which is not a problem caused by insufficient grounding. It's something to do with the internal components of this turntable. Just like that Ion TT USB, this has some poorly shielded either power supply or electrical component that is causing interference, and as I move the tone arm and the stylus closer to the center in this particular area, you hear noise.